Good morning, YouTube. I had to go back to court last week, but this time I wasn't the one being sued.
So are you recording all of the nefarious activities?
For your channel, my name is Dan, and this is my dealership, NG Supercars. And if you didn't know, we have two companies, NG Supercars, our dealership, and Normal Guy LLC, which is our parts and services website. Go check it out. You can support us by buying parts and services and cars through us. We do appreciate it. And if you've watched the channel long enough, you know that earlier this year, I got sued and it was a bunch of BS, and we ended up winning that lawsuit. And the person that sued us, not only did they not get anything, they had to pay my lawyer's fees. So that was pretty awesome.
I am dismissing with prejudice, and I'm awarding full legal fees, document fees, and any other court costs to the defendant. So we not only got it dismissed with prejudice, he has to pay for all of my fees. So I'm hopefully going to be out nothing.
I was solicited by a company that is suing EAG. This is not the first company to sue EAG that I'm aware of. In fact, I know of multiple companies and multiple individuals that have filed suit against EAG, although I don't know how many have actually fully gone to trial and had conclusions, or whatever it's called, judgments. That's it. That's the right word. I know for sure of one company that sued EAG and has won a judgment against EAG. I don't know the outcome of that judgment, if that company ever got paid or anything like that. As far as I'm aware, last time I talked to that company, they have not been paid. When I was more involved, I'm aware of, I don't know, at least 5 or 6 individuals or companies that had filed suit or threatened lawsuits or had lawyers sending nasty grams or whatever you want to call it to EAG. Usually they were aimed at like he was named as an individual, not just the company. Why did I have to go to court? Well, Makina Motor Works is suing EAG. They're suing EAG and Art Bartosik. And actually, here's the thing where it gets a little bit weird is EAG is not EAG. It's actually DBA is EAG. Their actual company name is Black Orchid Enterprise LLC, and it's been created in Delaware. Why? Well, because, taxes and all that stuff. Why was I called to court? Well, I testified against EAG. So I basically gave my story. This was not the trial, like the main judgment, whatever. This was, I think they call it like an emergency injunction or emergency stay or something like that. I don't know the legal stuff very well. I'm not a lawyer, so forgive me. I'm going to slaughter what this means. But basically, Makina is the new company created by the investors who had invested in Black Orchid Enterprise, EAG. And when EAG defaulted on their loans and agreement, the investors took the intellectual property and other materials and hardware and whatever.
In the middle of the night, they literally robbed the company. They came in, they took equipment, they took all the parts
from EAG and spun up a new company, and this new company is called Makina. That stuff's all weird legal stuff. I don't know the details of that. When they basically called in this default on their loans and agreements, they were trying to arrange the transportation of the big 5-axis Herco CNC machine. Moving a, 40,000 pound machine, whatever it is huge. Moving that takes some phone calls and trucks and rigging and forklifts and crazy stuff to be able to do it. It's expensive, and it doesn't just happen overnight. So while Makina was trying to organize getting this thing, Art somehow managed to get transportation for the CNC machine and moved it to his new location. So apparently Art's still in business. I don't know what that business name is now. I don't know any details. And honestly, I don't care, and I'm not going to promote it because no, he's not getting free marketing off my channel. So he still exists. He still has the CNC machine. Makina wants that back because it's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it was part of the collateral of this loan. So they're trying to get this machine back along with other stuff. They went to the judge and basically said, hey, we're concerned that something's going to happen to the CNC machine. It's either going to get moved or, damaged or whatever. And so they were trying to get basically the courts to take possession of the CNC machine or to prevent Art from using it or something like that. They contacted me and said, hey, can you testify in court? And I said, yes, what do you need? And they basically wanted me to run through my story. So I'm going to tell you what I testified in court because this is all going to be public record, or it is public record, so I can tell you all this stuff now. So we have to go way, way back to probably 2018 or so. I started my YouTube channel over 8 years ago. Sometime around 2018 or 2019, Art converted his first Ferrari. From what I understand, he first converted a 360, and then he did a 430, and then he wanted to do the Scuderia. And they had contacted me, EAG had contacted me and asked me to do a video, and I declined initially. Then eventually they got the Scuderia working, and they reached out to me again. And this time I thought, this is interesting enough. They took a car that never had a manual transmission. Let's go take a look at it. So I go down there to San Antonio. This was when they're still in San Antonio. Do the review and all that stuff.
Right. And it still has the... nice.
God damn.
It's slippery out here.
What is this?
In my opinion, this is what kicked off EAG's success. This was the first real public video showing the Scuderia, in my opinion, a legitimate source other than themselves. EAG was doing these videos and they were really slimy and they just didn't seem trustworthy. And I think a lot of people, they were very salesman-y, right? Like I just didn't get a good vibe watching those videos. And that was part of why I didn't want to do that first video. It just never really felt right. So I do this video and the next thing you know, they're getting press with, legitimate automotive news sources. Matt Farah does a video, all this stuff. But at the time, the computers were not resolved in the Scuderia, and they had not figured that out. So it was mechanically fine, computers were wonked out. Some time passes, and I visit EAG a few more times just to see how things are going. I never really am involved at this point other than like friendly phone calls or advice and stuff like that. Over time, Ferrari stops letting them get conversion parts. They were starting off with actual OEM Ferrari parts, buying them directly from Ferrari or third-party Ferrari sources. But eventually, Ferrari turns off the spigot. They can no longer get parts. They get blacklisted. They can't even contact Ferrari dealers and stuff and get parts. This was right around when COVID's starting, so Art starts manufacturing these parts. And this is when he was literally melting metal and pouring it into molds in their shop. I saw this, I came down there and saw them doing this, and I thought to myself, my Lord, he's willing to go that far to make these parts. That to me was a great sign of okay, this person's willing to make sure that they're gonna succeed. And the demand started getting insane. So I thought to myself, I don't wanna be at that time in the conversion business. What I wanna be is in the manufacturing business. I felt like if you made the parts and sold the parts to third parties, now you've got a global distribution that you can have, and this makes an incredibly a great company to build up and then sell. So my thought was, let's build up this manufacturing company and sell it in 5 years and make some money. Art and I got together, and that's when we created Gated 6. So there was actually initially a third guy involved. That didn't work out. That guy, we won't go there. It's not relevant to the story. So he left the picture, and now it's just Art and I doing Gated 6. How are we going to get all these kits made? Well, I contribute many tens of thousands of dollars of my own money, and I got some friends to all kick in some money in an investment initially to create 430 and 360 kits. We had diagrams, we had all the engineering stuff to send it out to third parties. So we send out the stuff to the third parties to get manufactured, create, I think, 50 kits, if I remember correctly. The plan was at this time, every time we sold a kit, we would take a chunk of that money, a couple of $1,000s of it, put it back into the investors, pay back the investors. So that way, by the time you've sold about half the kits, the investors are paid off. And now you're just making pure profit. In the meantime, it was a small enough chunk that we could still operate on that differential, right? So if the kits cost X dollars to make and they're 2 or 3X to sell, and you're paying back X dollars, well then you're still making 1 to 2x on that every time, even though you're paying back your investment. And that was the plan, and it seemed really good. And I also personally told all these investors, hey, no matter what happens, I'll make sure that you get paid back, because I had money from my own previous stuff that if shit hit the fan, I could pay them back. So we start doing that. We manufacture the kits. Mind you, the kits are all in San Antonio. I'm in Austin. It's an hour and a half plus drive. This is the warehouse side of Gated 6 where we got all of our parts. Yes, glorious clutch pedals. So after the kits get made, we start putting them in these totes and organizing them on shelves and whatever. Like, stuff's looking good. I go down there one day and I count the kits just for curiosity's sake. And I noticed that we're missing a couple. So again, I think there were supposed to be 50. Let's say there's 47. And I'm like, oh, that's odd. So I confront Art and say, hey, why are we missing some kits? And he says, oh, well, I needed to use some for commitments I had made from at EAG. Because Art still was running European Auto Group. I'm like, well, you need to pay for those kits. Oh, well, I can't. Why not? Well, I needed that money to pay for the employees and to pay my bills and all this other stuff. So back in my mind, I'm thinking, all right, I have to keep him on an extraordinarily short leash. He's going to play games, so he's not trustworthy. In hindsight, that should have been like, all right, red flag, like get out, right? But at the same time, it's like, well, we need to sell these kits to at least pay back these investors. And at that point, the ball had already gotten rolling. We already started a second round of investment to do the 599 kits. I did that fundraising. And at that point in time, we had now raised over $250,000 of investment, and the 509 kits were in production. I'm like, we just let's get past these kits that we made, sell them, pay back the investors, and then I can figure out something else. I don't know. In the back of my mind, I thought to myself, well, I can eventually push Art out or somehow make it so that he has less control or whatever. If I'm running the production side of things, I don't have to worry about him too much. He can just focus on doing these installations. So I did start relocating some of the kits up to Austin so that he had less control and stuff, making it more difficult for him to just kind of sneak away with a kit or whatever. I'm doing what I can to try and keep this thing running because, it still looks like a good opportunity. Months go by and, we're selling kits, and every time I sell a kit to a third party at this point, I'm taking that money and paying back the investors, and so it's looking like things are working okay. They're not ideal, but it's working. Again, a couple months go by, it's the end of the year, and Art and Andre reach out to me and say, hey, we've got an investor. They want to kick in over $1 million and all this stuff. And I'm like, hooray, this is awesome. This is a great opportunity to pay back the investors I've gotten involved, so that now I can basically choose to participate or not. My involvement's no longer necessary if needed, but at the same time, hey, if they're going to bring some adults to the show and they're going to take over, this sounds wonderful. So the initial plan is they've got these two guys that are savvy business investors, and they're going to help run the company and get stuff organized, bring in real accountants. So it's looking like, oh my gosh, we're finally gonna legitimize this business and it's gonna go great. So I'm super excited about this and everything's looking really good. And then they send me all of the paperwork for what's gonna happen. And I immediately noticed that a glaring, obvious mistake, right? My name is not listed anywhere as one of the owners in the new entity. So basically they're gonna spin up a new company. The new company is going to acquire EAG and Gated 6, but I'm no longer a part of the picture. And they're trying to sneak this by me, and of course they don't mention this. And I confront Art again about this, and he's like, oh, well, I'll give you a portion of my equity. And I'm just like, you know what? If this is the game they're gonna play, this is my opportunity to leave. And I think, you know what? Let's just get out. I don't want to participate in this anymore. I don't want to be in business with him anymore. As part of this, I actually get a signed contract to sell all of the intellectual property and the conversion kits that were created by Gated 6, all of the names, websites, whatever. Basically, Gated 6 is being acquired by this new entity, Black Orchid Enterprise. And as a part of that agreement, they're going to pay off the investors, both the 43360 investors and the 599 investor. I'll have no debt. Gated 6 will no longer exist. And basically, because they don't want me to be an owner, I say, hey, you know what? Since I'm not going to be an owner, but I did contribute a lot and I've worked really hard for this, I want a royalty. And they said, great, that sounds fine. So they do actually add into the contract a royalty agreement. And I'm supposed to get $2,000 per conversion for 5 years. And in return, I'm supposed to promote this on YouTube and social media and stuff like that. That seems really reasonable to me, all right? Not a whole lot of extra effort. I mean, I wanted to continue to support this anyway because it's a cool product and they're, going to have some adults running this show. So now I kind of get the best of both worlds in theory. I can get paid. I don't have any sort of actual business ties to it as far as my name is not a part of the company. So this is why if you heard me back then, you may have heard some times where I say, oh, I'm an owner in it, whatever. I was an owner in Gated 6. I never owned EAG and I never owned any of Black Orchid Enterprise, even though I was supposed to own part of Black Orchid Enterprise. That's just how it all fell, how it happened. So they get the new investors, they get the money, and they move to Austin. That's part of what they're trying to do, and they buy the CNC machines. We are actually using some of this investment money and getting a 5-axis CNC machine and some other equipment. So this is when they're really trying to ramp up stuff. So I'm like, great, hey, send me the money and I'll pay off the investors. And we had a deadline, this is the date that we're supposed to pay off the first investment, this is the date we're supposed to pay off the second investment. And both those dates come and go. And now I'm starting to get kind of nervous. Art's spending money like crazy. He's just doing all sorts of stuff that, in my opinion, was stupid. They moved to this new shop, and the first thing they do is gut the entire shop. And I'm like, why did you do this? The shop was perfect. It had a Ferrari mural on the wall, and they ripped it all down. Check this out. We have a Ferrari mural. Totally gutted it to make this vision of glass walls and all this stupid shit, and they're spending literally hundreds of thousands of dollars to renovate a rental property. And I'm like, oh my God, so the adults aren't running the show. This is not good. And I don't really have contact with these guys who are investing, so I don't really have a way to send a warning and say, hey man, this isn't going right. So finally, after really, really harping on Art, he pays back the investors, the first chunk, the 360-430 investors, but not the 599 investor. And so I'm thinking, all right, my best option is to continue to promote them, uphold my part of the contract, try and gain some royalties. And worst case scenario is I'm going to contribute my royalties to paying off this investor, and then I can just be done. At the same time, again, they're making real kits, the conversions seem to be going well. Over time, so I'm promoting stuff, and this is when I start getting phone calls from customers who are pissed off, and they're saying stuff like, I sent them my car a year ago, and I'm like, what in the world's going on? So I go to the shop, and my GoPro overheated. GoPros. Anyway, where was I? So I'm waiting to get the second investor straightened out, and in the meantime, we're promoting the company to try and get my royalty. And lo and behold, I don't get paid for this royalty, ever. None of it. In the meantime, Art's talking about how they've converted hundreds of cars, which all the conversion kits that we manufactured from Gated 6 have been sold and all that stuff. So, that's 100 plus kits right there. So time starts going by and I'm starting to get frustrated. I'm trying to convince Art to hire an adult to run the company. So I'm pushing to have him hire Chris as the CEO because I feel like Chris could actually get this stuff straight. If he could really run, because he's got manufacturing business experience. He's run manufacturing companies. He knows how to do this. So Chris eventually gets brought in as CEO and he gets a contract. And I am sitting next to Chris, who is the new CEO of European Auto Group. Then they let me know that they have this other investor. What I don't know is that the first investor is trying to sue Art and Black Orchid for defaulting on their loan agreements. I don't know the exact details of that. I'm made aware of this, and I have text messages from Art talking about this. Now they get this new investor who's going to eventually become Machina, These guys want to buy in. It's a couple $1 million, basically a line of credit and some other stuff. And they're going to buy out the old investors. They're going to get the 509 investor that I fundraised paid off and do some other stuff with this money. And of course, at this time, Chris is CEO, so I'm thinking, wow, they might finally get someone in here who can get the thing running correctly. And my back of my mind, my hope is these guys will come in, and I read the contract and I saw what it allowed them to do. And I saw that if they default, if Art defaults, it does basically allow them to take control of the company. So my thinking is, maybe they're just going to take over and push Art out, and then holy crap, this thing could actually be a real thing. Then I'd want in, right? But if not, then hopefully the money at least gets paid off. I can just kind of sever ties, try and get my royalty if possible, but just soft pedal it. And mind you, at this point, like I'm soft pedaling it because I've got my own company. I'm trying to do my own thing. I don't want to commit that much time or energy because I'm not getting my royalties, so I'm not really motivated to do a whole lot. So I do a couple more videos showing Chris, talking about they're trying to get stuff going. Then the new investors get involved, and holy crap, they pay off this loan to the investor that I had brought in. Gated 6 commitments were no longer gone. The debt was paid off, everything was done. So now it's just royalties, the only thing left. Fast forward a couple months go by, they start really trying to take care of this backlog of cars that Art had built up, because basically he was getting people to ship him his car. They would take the car apart and then throw it in storage. And it was just like, oh my God, I can't believe he's doing this. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And then these people would be sitting there waiting for forever for these parts to get made. Well, they had all this money coming in. Where the hell are these parts? And it was excuses after excuses. Like, it's one of those things where it just kept building up and looking worse and worse. And I'm just like, I need to get out. I don't want to be attached to this. But again, you have this hope. Chris is now there. They got these real investors. These guys are going to turn around, right? Josh and I briefly do a contract where we're trying to take over managing some of the sales and helping some of these clients.
EAG has hired Normal Guy to basically be their marketing and customer service side of the business. So when you guys call in and you want to place an order, you're going to be talking to one of us too.
And we talk like 4 people out of lawsuits. We get them straight. We get their cars done and whatever. So we start really getting things going. Well, then they pay us and realize they don't want to pay us that much money. So then they want to renegotiate the contract and pay us less. And Josh and I are like, you know what, we're done. So at that point I say, you know what, I'm completely severing any relationship with you guys. Here's where my contract's at for my royalties. I need to get paid on this royalty. This is where it's kind of frustrating. The investors were not aware of my contract, even though it should have been part of their due diligence. Art never disclosed it. So when I present my contract to them, they say that I just made it up or something at first. So I had to prove that it was a real contract. And then they just said, well, this is between you and Art, so we're not going to pay it. At this point, I'm like, you know what? I'm done. I want nothing to do with it. I don't really have any reason to hang around or continue trying to get anything out of any of these people, because none of them are going to help me and none of them really care, and they're all out for themselves. So I'm out. We're done. Shortly after that, Chris gets fired, and then shortly after that was when the investors call in the default and take possession of all this stuff and blah, blah. And then they file the lawsuit, and now it goes to court, and then I'm asked to testify, and I basically tell them what I just told you. Where did court end up? So there was only a few people testified. It was kind of weird. They invoked something where us as witnesses couldn't be in the courtroom when other witnesses were talking. So I don't know what other people said. I don't know what happened. I do know as of this point, the judge did not award them this emergency stay or emergency injunction, whatever you call it. So Art still has possession of the CNC machine as of this point, which is really disappointing and frustrating. And obviously if it goes to court, I will testify again because, well, I might have to. I don't know. I don't know how it works, but if they ask me to, I probably will. That's where we're at. Yeah, just complete shit show, and I'm really happy that I don't have anything to do with it anymore. I'm glad I got out, but at the same time, it's like, I'm sure the comment section is going to go nuts. I'm sure people on some stupid message board who have nothing better to do are going to be saying all sorts of stuff about I should have known or should have done this or whatever. You weren't there. you weren't living in the moment at that time. You don't have the facts I had at the time. So it's easy to look back and say things you should have done differently, but in the moment, it's harder to make those decisions and think what's the right thing to do. Sure, I could have made better decisions with the data I have today, but I didn't have that data at that time. So I don't really think back on it and think, oh, I screwed up. I think back and I say, man, I'm glad I got out. It was an interesting experience. I learned a lot of lessons, and had I trusted my gut from the start, it would have never happened. My gut always said Art's not to be trusted. I never did trust him. That's why when we created Gated 6, I had full control of all the finances, but the part I didn't predict was that he would steal the kits and sell them through EAG. That was the part I was like, oh, yeah. And again, hindsight, right? You go, yep, should have seen that. I should have taken possession of all those kits, but I didn't have room in my house to store 50 conversion kits. It would have filled up my entire guest bedroom, right? What can you do? Anyway, that's where we're at today. If you're a victim of EAG and you want to help Machina with this lawsuit, I would reach out to them. You can reach out to us and we can get you in touch with them. And you feel free to, you could send your story as an affidavit, whatever. One of those things that's signed and whatever and goes to court. You could do that. Tell your story and maybe support them or whatever. Hopefully less drama for you guys. And we're going to keep doing our thing. If you're curious, yes, we do buy kits from Machina now and do conversions with them. Also, if you want to get a conversion with them for some reason and not with us, you can. Please let them know that we referred you. We get referrals from them, so we appreciate that. That's it for this video. Check out our website, normalguysupercar.com, ngsupercars.com. And we'll see you in the next one. We're going to be doing a lot of cool car stuff. You're going to want to stay tuned. It's going to be sweet.